Check. How about this one? That mic seems to be on.
There you go. You're on. I'm on.
I think you're on too.
I think I'm on too. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Little technical difficulties. We had to do a little computer swap out. So hopefully this, when you do your presentation, we're all good because he's using my Revit instead of his Revit. So we all know how that goes. You get a little weird when you're hopping onto someone else's system if it's not set up just right. So, anyways, well, welcome. Happy New Year. I know it's a little too late. I heard a little conversation on the radio. There might be, what's the deadline for saying Happy New Year to somebody? It's like first 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, first time you see them in the new year. Not really sure what, but anyways, welcome everybody to Seattle Revit User Group 2012. Also, it's kind of worked out funny how things happen sometimes with that snowstorm that happened in that third week of January, because that Wednesday that really everybody got pounded was the original date for this meeting. So funny how that worked out. All just kind of, just all kind of like flowed just nicely. I knew we needed the break to do some other things to get set up, and here we go. So anybody here for their first meeting? Oh, a bunch. Nice. Awesome. Definitely I say it every time, always love to have new people out. I always get a little worried if there's no new people every month, so I was glad to see everybody showing up, and hopefully we'll have you here and maybe some of your colleagues throughout the rest of the year. So I guess just to kind of start off this year, I was going to do a little couple of quizzes here, see if for all the people that have been here for a while, a little SeaRUG history lesson. So what years, now board members, you can't answer this because most of you should know it, and if you don't, well, that's another meeting. How many years do you think this is for SeaRUG? Just throw something out.
3, 4, and 5.
3, 4, and 5? Oh, just missed it. 6. It's our 6th year. Moving into our 6th year as a independent user, community user group. So we're really proud of that fact that we're still going. People show up. We got of course, a big group online. A little bonus factoid, this is for the library. This is our 5th year at the Seattle Public Library, so I definitely want to thank their hospitality for having us here all the time and putting up with us. So we definitely appreciate Kara and Jeff and the whole crew, and Chris up in the booth. Okay, another question. This is open to anybody. Well, not board members, excuse me. The July 2006 was our first meeting. What local firm hosted the first SeaRUG meeting? Anybody know? Miller Hull. Wait, that was a board member voice, I think. Now, Pat was quiet. He's like, yeah, I knew that answer. And okay, here's one. How many people were at that meeting? Any raise of hands? Oh, cool, awesome. Okay, so Miller Hull. So, what was the meeting topic?
ArchiCAD?
It was Revit. Hey, trick question. No, it was actually new features in 9.1. Shows you how far we've come. Jerry Jackson. I was going to put that in there, but I was like, yeah, that might be a push. But yes, Jerry Jackson, very good.
That's going back a little ways.
Yeah, that does go back. Okay, so the big news of all this change that we're doing, this update, and we've talked about it all pretty much the whole half of last year, is SeaRUG becoming a nonprofit organization, an independent group, and so now SeaRUG is officially Seattle Revit User Group Incorporated. So we're actually really excited about that. We're registered as a nonprofit organization in the state of Washington, and soon we'll be submitting and getting those gears turning to get our federal nonprofit status. A lot of people ask, why are you doing that? Well, big reason, tax purposes. If anybody belongs to a nonprofit organization, we're not here to make money. We're just here to keep these events and meetings going. So by doing that, it helps us out quite a bit come end of year. Okay, so I had this on the opening slides, but because of our little delayed start, we'll cover it now. So I guess I'm glad I had this in my notes. Talking about the sponsorship groups that have helped take care of us over the course of this year to help us out throughout 2012. Our executive partners, many of you know our local value-added resellers, the PPI group, Imaginative Technologies, and ID8. So I want to especially thank all of them for their contributions to us this year, and they'll be hosting a few meetings coming up over the course of the year. Yay, yes, thank you. We also have our premier partners that you'll see this year as well with Quarry Group, American Reprographics Company, and ABC Imaging. So look for them as well throughout the year. And then, of course, our associate partners, our first group, GLY Construction, Mulvaney G2 Architecture, Lighted Construction, PCS Structural Solutions, Slater Partner Architects, and BN Builders. So this is that group. If anybody had submitted for their firm or organization to be an associate partner and we didn't get it by this meeting, I apologize. Otherwise, your name would have been up here. I'm sure there are some coming in. So this is that smaller group that recognizes a lot of stuff that we're doing. And if your organization wants to be part of that, I'm around. You can ask questions after the meeting. There is a forum. There's more information on our website. Just go to the sponsorship info link, or you can even just email sponsorship@searug.org, or just, like I said, find me or any one of the board members after the meeting, and we'll be glad to answer any questions for you. Okay, the SeaRUG survey. A lot of people filled out the survey, which was we really appreciate that information. It really helps us kind of put together the year and make sure that we're targeting what people want to learn, what they're interested in, what those hot ticket items are. So we didn't have as big of a response this year as we did last year, but hopefully that'll turn around. Go through those little lulls, but the information we did get back was really good. It was a nice comparison to what we did last year. So I figured I'd just go through some of the items as far as what these aren't all of them, but these are kind of the hot spot items. Level of involvement, mostly work in Revit. More than half the group mostly work in Revit. Let's see, what flavor are you using? We got Revit architecture is typically the highest structure. Where's the structure representation? Come on. And then MEP eked it out. So that was actually really interesting to see our MEP groups coming out. That's great. And as far as disciplines, we just kind of listed the percentage of the groups that were coming in. And then some more interesting stats. This deals more with the actual content. So what skill level presentations you like to see? Actually, it's funny I think when we first started, this number was completely flipped because people were still learning it. I think less than half of the people that were members at the time were just learning it. They haven't even started it yet, haven't started playing with Revit yet, so everybody was just really thirsty for knowledge. And so now, but still, it's great to see that even with fundamental and intermediate levels, that people are still growing, still learning, still getting involved in BIM technologies. And then, of course, the list of all of our top topics, tips and tricks. How about that?
Yeah, I was here to talk about legal and contract issues today, though.
Yeah, I know. I was like, legal and contract, that's what I deal with at my office. It's like, why don't people want to see more of that? Jeez. Anyways. Oh, well, I guess I'll just have to, do my own research. So, but yeah, this was actually really good. There's actually a couple of topics on here that, quite honestly, I think we just didn't get in. I thought of them like last moment. So By the way, these numbers here for the statistics are based off of people that voted for 4 and 5 levels. So that's like 1 was, don't really care. Number 3 was indifferent. And 5 was absolutely, let's do it. And so I basically totaled up the 4s and the 5s to get these percentages. But maybe just do an unofficial count on a couple other topics here. So if you would have voted a 4 or a 5, may you see your hands if you were interested in conceptual or schematic design. If you would have put a 4 or a 5 on that, okay? Cool, good. And if you would have put a 4 or a 5 on a model or model analysis, building analysis. Okay, so it's kind of a balance, mostly indifferent or, whatever. Okay, well, that's cool. Glad to know that. Okay, how we doing? We'll get through these so we can get going. Oh, I almost forgot. Most popular write-in topic. Any guesses? Just kind of a general topic. More MEP. So we'll definitely listen to that. We definitely want to try to get some more MEP involvement. I think one of the things that makes the group great is that we do try our best to keep this balance between all the disciplines. There are a lot of user groups and small community groups that actually really focus on their particular product. Maybe get into some high-level stuff. But I think one of the things that makes our group great is that we try our best to keep that balance between all the disciplines because it is a really collaborative way of working in an environment. And so by sharing information, and even if you don't use the product, I learned so much about these other applications that even though I don't go back to the office and use them, it really does help me in my workflow because I know what other people are doing and are thinking about. And so I think on a lot of levels it makes me better at what I'm doing. So I definitely think that's where our group is unique, not only in the products, but also all the disciplines that are part of the group. Okay, moving on. Educational outreach updates. Justin Lopez is going to come down and just do a little quick comment for us on the educational outreach stuff. So, Justin.
Hi, everybody. Good turnout today. Glad to see everybody's here in 2012. So educational outreach, quick update. This is actually a new effort with SeaRUG that we're trying to get underway, and I'm here to ask for some more volunteers with that. We want to establish more points of contact with our local learning institutions, training centers, universities. So if you'd be interested in helping form kind of a connection between SeaRUG and your local learning institution, I think we have some students here today. It'd be great to have your feedback. You can, Rob, did you put my email in here? Did you get a chance to put my email in?
No, I didn't get on there.
Well,
technical difficulties.
Okay, technical difficulties. Unfortunately, if everybody has a pen, you can contact me at justin.l@searug.org. And we're looking to get a good established base of point of contacts so we can keep SeaRUG members informed with what's going on in the local community as far as learning institutions and training centers. So if there's events or training available, SeaRUG can offer you a place to go and kind of find out what's available in your local area. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate that. So yeah, I think you'll probably, are you hanging out for a little bit after the meeting too? Okay, yeah, so if you didn't catch that, just grab them after the meeting. Okay. A couple other things to get to really quick. I have a request on the forums. Maybe try to avoid posts because we don't allow different groups to post up things about products or services. You know, our forums are really built for helping troubleshooting. Hey, what's the problem with this? Hey, has anybody tried this or done that? Or looking for options and how to use design options, work sets. Or I'm having a problem with this, so I can't install the program and getting this error. We want to really make our forums more of a helpful learning environment for people. We don't want to try to set up this environment for putting products or services against each other and and oh, what do you think about this? And it's like fishing for comments, and I don't want to really muddy our forums with some of those. So if you could just kind of keep it keep it on the product, and we'll just do our best to have our community members and people that actually look at the forums on a regular basis to answer your questions and help you out. Okay, meeting date change. No surprise that we didn't have our January meeting, but we will have a July meeting this year. Past few years we've kind of taken a break in the middle of the year, so we will be instituting a July meeting. And as far as taking the January meeting off each year, that's still to be determined. It is kind of nice to have that break, because even during the holidays, people like us like to not have to think about what our January meeting is going to be. We want to enjoy the holidays too. So that's my little sob story, if you can feel for me. So we'll see how that goes. I think a lot also depends on what we have established to kick off the year, if it already is taking care of itself. So we'll revisit that later this year. Past meetings available. We record all of our meetings now, or we do our best to, and so you can always get those. I think we started recording them in August, was our first one, so any meetings the past 4 months of last year, the last 4 months or 3 months of last year, all recorded, so go check them out. Great lunch hour event at the office or something like that, brown bag deal, so definitely recommend checking those out. Our goal is to try to have those up and online by the end of the month of the meeting, so by the 29th, we hope to have this all posted and ready for you, so keep an eye out for it. And I was actually really surprised on the survey. A lot of people, almost half the people, didn't realize that we posted those up. So, yeah, keep that in mind when we asked about that. So that was a little surprising. But anyways, go check it out. You'll learn lots. We'll try to have all of ours up there for this year, so I'll have a nice archive database of those. And of course, I always like to mention AU Online. If you weren't able to make Autodesk University, get on there. It's free if you have subscription. There's just so much content up there. It kind of boggles my mind, actually. There's just too much information. So just know that if you have a subscription member, I'm not sure how it works with the sites, with the educational element, students access. I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that there is a way to access a lot of this content, even if you're a student. So, auautodesc.com. All right, let's get this show started, I guess. I guess it's about that time. All right, so our feature presentation. Our number one request over the year, when I talked to Scott about this presentation, I showed him a list. He's like, "Oh, that's easy, tips and tricks. I can do that." So we are going to be doing Revit tips and tricks, and Scott Davis from Autodesk is here. I have this. I was going to just read off his little bio. It was too much to memorize, so I just was going to state it off really quick. And this is the shortened version.
We shortened it 3 times, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So Scott, he specializes in Revit and BIM. He joined Autodesk in 2007. He's active promoting BIM around the country, events like AIA Convention, Green Building International Conference, and Expo. He's taught classes at AU. Some of you may have seen him. I've sat in a few of his classes over the years. Augie CAD Camp, as well as the Revit Technology Conference, which I'm hoping to get to this year. Jeez.
It's in Georgia this year.
It's in Georgia?
In June.
There you go. Wow.
You got to remember, the people that plan this are Australians. They have no idea.
Bring your water and your sports drinks.
A fly swatter.
And your Zip Fizz. Okay. Let's see, where was I? Oh, and he's also the founder of the Revit Users Group, Island Empire in Southern California. And he has a Bachelor of Architecture's degree from California Polytechnic University in Pomona. So anyways, it's great to have him up here. This guy's really hard to get a hold of, and it was really awesome that we were able to time it with him coming up for a visit for some other things and to get him locked in for this. So I really appreciate Scott making some time for us coming out. So here's Scott Davis.
Thanks, guys. All right, first off, again, apologies for all of the confusion up front. I was going to use my machine. Rob specifically asked me to make sure that you're recording. Whatever you're going to do to record is working. I dropped the ball on that. We tried to get Jing. Has anybody used Jing? It's a screen capture utility. Now, you can get it for free. We just found that out. The free version, it says online, only records 5 minutes at a time. I said, that's no problem. I'll just buy the pro version. So I just bought the pro version 10 minutes ago. The Pro version also only records up to 5 minutes of video. So now I'm on Rob's machine. So you guys, as he said, you know how hard it is to switch to somebody else's laptop when you're so used to your own. So we'll see how it goes. So preparing for this, tips and tricks obviously is one of your highest rated topics that you wanted to hear talked about. So that's what I thought I'd do today. And when Rob and I originally talked about it, I said, you know what, I'll probably do most of it live in Revit, because I like to be in the software. I'm really not a PowerPoint guy. And as I started going through it, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many tips and tricks out there that we could hit upon. It might be better for me to go through some of them through PowerPoint and explain them, and then other ones go through live. Because if I tried to show them all live, I'd get through probably, you know, a dozen or so, and that wouldn't be very fulfilling for you guys. So a big list of things. Let me switch over to my presentation here real quickly. Oops. See, already screwing up on somebody else's computer. You already got the intro. Oops. Click. Is my mouse not working? There we go. So a little bit more about me. You might have seen the link on the invitation. So if you want to find out about my LinkedIn profile and all of those good things, it's on that website up there at the top. 5 years at Autodesk. Actually, this March 5th is my anniversary date. It's been a fun ride. I'm a technical specialist, which means I get to go around the country and do events like this. My primary role is actually in sales, believe it or not. I'm an architect by background. Where's all my MEP instructional guys that wanted to hear more MEP content? Yeah, a few. I'm an architect by background, so I'm going to try to cover a lot of varied topics today. Technical specialists, we are pre-sales support, so we actually go out and support the territory guys and do technical demos. So I show people how Revit will help them in their business, and it's beyond Revit now. It's Quantity Takeoff, it's Navisworks, it's Ecotech, it's Green Building Studio, and all of those other tools that we're giving to you guys to use for this effort. CAD background, I started a long time ago. I started in high school. Does anybody remember VersaCAD that's up there? Yeah? Oh, you're dating yourselves a little bit if you remember VersaCAD. So my first experience in CAD was about 1988, and we used monochrome green screens. You guys remember those? So you couldn't see what color anything was unless you either plotted it on a pen plotter or listed the properties of it in AutoCAD. 4 years at Fluor Daniel. I was their go-to CAD guy. Fluor Daniel is a huge, giant construction and engineering company. I think about 14,000 people worldwide when I worked there, and I ended up being part of their CAD standards group. We were trying to write CAD standards for 14,000 people. How many people have done CAD standards for their offices? A few? It's pretty difficult, even for a small group, right? So we spent about 2 weeks arguing about what north arrow was going to be used. That was productive. Finally settled on the engineering scroll, like what you see on your civil engineering drawings. That became our standard north arrow. The architects weren't very happy. 8 years at WLC Architects. They're down in Southern California. I primarily got into educational work. That's about 75% of what that firm does. Got to design and build some of my own projects. So if you're in Southern California, there's a couple of my own buildings down there that I got to do. I was still the AutoCAD guy. We were in transition at WLC from AutoCAD 14 to AutoCAD 2005, all in one jump. That office decided to skip everything else in between. Right? Anybody else still in 14? Some people raise their hand. It's absolutely true. Some people still use AutoCAD 14. Right about that time, we were investigating using what was called Architectural Desktop, now known as AutoCAD Architecture. And I contacted a friend of mine that worked down at WATG. He put me in touch with a gentleman named Jim Balding that you guys might have heard of. And Jim said, forget that architectural desktop stuff. There's something way better out there. And I can't even tell you what it is because I'm under a non-disclosure agreement. So he basically spelled out the initials. He goes, go to this website, www.revit.com, and check it out. So I did. And it just said under construction. And it said under construction for about 3 weeks. And finally, there was something there. And I downloaded it and started to use it immediately. So I'm one of the original Revit users. I don't know what number I am, top 30 somewhere, so a lot of experience there. And we talked about some of my speaking engagements earlier. That's generally the photo I use as my avatar, so if you see that out there somewhere, that's me. Mouse is not working. Try this one more time here. Oh, there we go. Click. All right, I'm going to have to use page down for this. So, tips and tricks, what it's all about today. Oh, that wasn't supposed to pop up yet. One of my number one sources for tips and tricks, Phil Reed is actually a good friend of mine. How many of you guys know Phil? You've heard of him before. right? He used to work for Autodesk. Now he's out on his own, and he's got this crazy project that everybody's kind of looking forward to, but nobody knows quite what it is, called Veo, if you've heard of that. He's also one of the authors of Mastering Autodesk Revit Architecture 2012, also known as Mara. And so there's an Appendix B in this book that is actually a whole list of tips and tricks. So I've actually talked to Phil and borrowed some of his content for that. And shameless plug, you can go buy it on Amazon. Augie Forums. I was actually part of the original Augie Forums back when they were called the Zug Design Forums. So if you guys remember that, you're also dating yourself a while. There's a quick link. There's actually a very specific tips and tricks section if you follow that link. And I'll supply you guys with all the slides so you can put this on the website and everybody can have all of these links as well. The Revit Forums, which is actually a relatively new forums that kind of grew out of some struggles at Augie for a little while, and the Revit Forums have become a very good resource. And again, they also have their own tips and tricks section. In fact, they pretty much mimic the Revit Forums originally, the Augie Forums originally for the Revit Forums. So a lot of the categories are the same there as well. And then good old Google. So I did some Google searching myself to find some of the tips and tricks that we're going to go over today. So the format of this is, first of all, just a series of, I think, 12 or 15 kind of PowerPoint slides just to go over some of the basic tips. Now, looking over the group and your survey results, I know a lot of you guys are a lot more advanced users. So a lot of these things you'll be like, yeah, I know that already. But what I think is important is a lot of these things, being power users, we forget to impress upon our users in our own offices some of these little things sometimes. So if you run across a few of these and you're like, yeah, we already knew that. We're much more advanced than that. Just remember that we have to go back and remind the people in our offices about some of the little things that really help with performance inside of Revit. So the first one is close hidden windows. This is actually really, really important, right? So as you go through the project browser and you start opening up different views, they all get stacked behind each other. Some people use a tiled view and then you can see them all open. Every once in a while you have a whole bunch of views open and you go Windows tile and you end up with like 16 little tiny views on the screen at the same time, right? Each one of those views is actually processing in the background. So even if you have a floor plan up on top, you might have 16 other views actually open behind it. So every move you make wants to regenerate that graphic no matter if you can see it or not. So up on the View tab at the top is this quick little button called Close Hidden Windows. It basically just shoves down everything behind your view, closes those down, and only your main open view remains open. Okay? That's a quick tip. Now, along with that goes keyboard shortcuts. How many people use keyboard shortcuts? Almost everybody. Good. Now, originally, Revit 1 and 2, I think, had no keyboard shortcuts. Everything was all click. Right? So I actually learned that way. I was a keyboard, I did everything in AutoCAD on the keyboard. So when I first started using Revit, that was one of my first wish list items, keyboard shortcuts. Well, by Revit 3, when they actually introduced it, I was used to clicking on everything, so now I'm pretty much a clicker rather than a keyboard shortcut guy. And it also helps when I do demos. If I was doing all keyboard shortcuts, you guys probably wouldn't be able to follow along or like, what the heck did he just type on the keyboard to get to that? So I tend to actually go up and point and click and do a lot of things that way. So keyboard shortcuts are under options. You can actually program these things to be single letter keyboard shortcuts, double letter keyboard shortcuts, triple, quadruple, kind of anything you want, but there's a hierarchy to them. So if you have a single letter keyboard shortcut, let's say you use M for move, and you also then have one that's MM maybe for mirror. So now I have a double letter keyboard shortcut that shares the same first letter. Then on the single letter, I have to use an enter or a space bar to initiate the command. Make sense? MM, if there's not another MM something else, if I just do MM, it will initiate immediately with no enter or no space bar. So there's a hierarchy to the way those things work. There are some in here that you can do as well. There's some that can actually use control keys, like properties by default is control 1, or in this case, this screen capture, it was PP or VP for properties. So you can have multiple keyboard shortcuts assigned to the same thing. And more recently, I believe it was 2012, sometimes my versions now that I work for Autodesk get blurred together because I've actually been using, believe it or not, 2013 behind the scenes for 6 months probably now in testing. And so I kind of forget sometimes when we actually introduce features. But there is a duplicate thing now, so if you try to do a keyboard shortcut that matches something else, it'll warn you and let you know that you already have that shortcut being used as another command. This is one of my favorites. Explode equals bad, right? Avoid the full explode command on CAD files in general. And actually, a little bit later on, there's another slide that has a bullet that says, don't explode anything. And this is actually one of my big pet peeves in AutoCAD. Because people would explode things like sand hatch patterns, right? Yeah, everybody that laughs knows exactly what I'm talking about. Or how about exploded dimensions, right? And then you go back to change the dimension for some reason, and now it's a line and a tick mark and a piece of text and another line, right? Or it's been exploded and it was supposed to have been 30 inches, but somebody typed in 3 feet instead. So a little bit the same way in Revit. When you bring in CAD files, there are actually some offices that say, never import a DWG, only link, so we can get rid of those things very easily. You know, reproduce your geometry as native Revit geometry, which is actually a really good tip as well. It's not that Revit doesn't like CAD geometry, doesn't like DWG, and in fact it's getting better, and our efforts internally to really improve upon that in the next releases. But in some cases, the kind of dumb 2D lines, arcs, and circles geometry really starts to make drawing our Revit files very heavy. So avoid those. Avoid exploding. If you have to, just do the partial explode, which takes the drawing file and explodes it down to its block elements. So if there are blocks in that drawing, they remain. If you do a full explode, it literally takes the DWG file and wipes everything out down the lines, arcs, and circles. Okay? Areas only. This is a big one, and a lot of people don't realize it, but there's a setting up under the Rooms and Areas tab, and this is where I should probably switch over to Revit and show you guys some of these things. In fact, I think I will. Let's just get the basic sample project open here. So I'll switch back and forth between PowerPoint and Revit. I probably should have had it open already. Would have saved 30 seconds or so. So under the Room and Area tab, a lot of people miss this little pull down right here. There's actually a little arrow at the bottom of the Room and Area tab, and you'll notice that in some of the other tabs, like Build doesn't have it, but this one does. There's actually some more information there. And you can go to the Area and Volume Computations. By default, Areas Only is on. When we start wanting to get into doing any kind of energy analysis and understanding what the volumes are, we check on Areas and Volumes. Now, I wish there was a way in Revit, maybe we should add this to the wish list, that there would be a quicker way to kind of toggle this on and off project-wide, but this is how you do it for now. And so when you turn Areas and Volumes on, every move I make that has where there's a room inside of a Revit model, if I move a wall, not only does it want to recalculate the area and display it for me in a schedule, it also wants to do the volume. So it's just adding another calculated value really to what Revit's having to think about for us. So if you're not doing anything with volumes at that particular time, you're not ready to go out to GBXML to do some kind of energy analysis, just make sure you go into the area and volume computation area, turn on Areas Only. It actually gives you a clue right there that it's faster. If your drawings seem to be slow, that's one thing to check out. Make sure that you're only calculating areas and turn those on only when you need them. And there's some other options down here for how you're actually calculating just area. Realize that these guys down here do not affect the volume calculation. The volume is always at the interior surface of the walls, the floor, the roof, etc. Okay. Back to PowerPoint, this one. All right, managing view depth. Now, I'm probably really guilty of this. So every time you cut a section, you drop a section mark inside of Revit, it kind of wants to go out to the extent of the geometry as indicated by this dashed line, right? But what that's going to do is when I open that view, it's going to want to show everything from that cut line all the way out, in this case, beyond the end of this building. So it's regenerating a lot of geometry. And if there's walls and things in the way, like maybe this wall right here, I can't even see any of this furniture beyond. But Revit's having to think about that, right? It's basically saying, okay, there's a table back there beyond that wall, but I can't see it, so don't display it in the view. So minimize those view depths. If you don't need that section to look all the way through the building, grab this last grip on the end, stretch it all the way back so it makes a more appropriate section cut. And then be careful about the sides as well. How far across the building do you want that crop region to be? So manage the view depths is a great tip. I tend to now try to make them more or less little slivers. You know, what's important about that section cut? What do we want to see? What do we want to convey in our construction documentation set? Like I said, I'm really guilty of this. I used to do it all the time. Just stretch them all the way out the building, right? So just be aware of that. Purge, just like in AutoCAD. Did you guys have a list routine set up for like super purge or something like that at some time, right? In AutoCAD, if you ran purge once and then ran it again and then ran it again, it kept to seemingly fine stuff over and over again. Purge does some of the similar things inside of Revit. Basically just gets rid of all the stuff that might be loaded into the project that you're not using. And in 2012, it's actually in a different list, but there's a materials purge now too, so you can actually get rid of all the materials that you may not happen to be using at that time. So make sure that you regularly purge unused elements. Now, be aware that whatever you hit, I can expand each one of these categories, and there's little check boxes, but if I just say purge and hit check all and OK, it will get rid of 252 objects right now. So use this list, accordingly. Go through it, expand what you need to see, make sure that you set it up the way you want to, and only purge out the stuff that you are sure that you're not going to be using. But that helps keep file size small, helps make saves better, helps make save to central better, etc. Errors and warnings. Now, when I go around and talk to customers, I do a lot of kind of troubleshooting as well. An office will call me in, we're having problems with our models, something's not working right, it's slow, kind of the normal stuff. One of the first things I do is I go to the errors and warnings dialog box. How many of you guys notice a little yellow warning dialog box that pop up in the corner of Revit? See, that's what I thought. Half of you didn't raise your hands. They're there almost every day, right? So a lot of times I'll go in an office and I'll go, hey, show me what the problem is. And they're clicking away, and that little yellow dialog box pops up, and they click on something else, and it's gone. I go, did you see that dialog box? No. Well, you click too fast. It's there for a reason. Those are warnings. Something is bugging Revit. When you see that little yellow thing, the problem is they're way too easy to go away, because you just click in some blank area and they're gone, right? So pay attention to this dialog box. I walked into an office. This is their Revit pilot project. This is actually several years ago now. They were doing this huge condominium complex. It was over 1,000 condominiums as a Revit pilot project, just a gigantic project. Went to their errors and warnings dialog box. They had over 4,000 warnings in their model. And I said, you guys need to clean those up. And they went, today? Yes. You're never, I shouldn't say never. Very rarely are you going to get rid of all of them, right? There's always this pesky little one, something about lines being slightly off axis. We've all seen that, right? Who hasn't seen that? Yeah, that's what I thought. Nobody raised their hand. It actually comes from AutoCAD. So AutoCAD uses a different floating point decimal system than Revit. So in actuality, when you draw a line in AutoCAD, you tell it to be perfectly flat. And in some cases, it can actually be off by like 0.000000 something 1 degree. So you bring that into Revit. Revit is actually more accurate than AutoCAD, believe it or not. A lot of people think the opposite. It's actually more accurate. That's why it realizes those things. You'll go back to the CAD file. It'll say, no, it's 0. It's at perfectly flat. Go back into Revit. Nope, it's off. So that warning is actually really tough to get rid of in some cases, unless you're very explicit about fixing those inside of AutoCAD. And we may have something in 2013 that hopefully will help you minimize those errors down the road. But things like rooms not being in a properly enclosed region, those are big because it's a room in space. Revit's trying to calculate what the area or what the volume is, and it's not enclosed. So it has to think about those things. So generally, these things that are in the errors and warnings dialog box are things that Revit has to think about in order to regenerate the view or save to central, do a calculation. So we need to be aware of them and need to minimize these errors as much as possible. The best way to minimize those errors is to catch them immediately when they happen. And I know it's not perfect. You can't always do that, right? But try your best every time you see that yellow dialog box to make sure that you go to it and fix it. Okay? Yes, there was a question.
Yeah, so what advice do you have for fixing the elements that are slightly off axis?
What do I have for fixing the lines are slightly off axis? It's really about going into AutoCAD, and if you list the properties of the line, you can see exactly what the line angle might be. Oh, when you're working in Revit? Yeah. Yeah. It's generally one of those things. So his question is, how do we deal with the line slightly off axis while working in Revit? It's generally one of those things that you bring in a CAD file and you use the pick geometry tool to pick an AutoCAD line to make a wall or something like that. Is generally when you get it. So the best bet when doing things in CAD is to use the CAD as an underlay. You can use the start point, but use Revit snapping tools to do the endpoint. Don't snap to that CAD geometry. Try to keep things in Revit as much as possible. That's one of those things that's going to be really hard to get rid of, at least currently in 2012, right? So that's an important warning, but some of these others are more important at the moment, okay? So I would say, where you can, try to satisfy slightly off axis. Otherwise, that's one that you can ignore for now. Okay? Revit calculator. How many people know that Revit can be a calculator? Okay, about half. Revit can do calculations, and a lot of people don't realize this. Whether it's in a dialog box like this or in a dimension string, you can just simply type equals and then any number of formulas. And we're going to get into formulas here in a little bit. So this is just an example of simple math. 4'5" minus 2 foot and 13/16 of an inch, and it will calculate the value for you. So you're not having to think about that kind of stuff. And like I said, you can get into a lot more complex stuff. Let's go over to Revit real quick. So this could be anything that has a dimension on it. Oh, there's no dimension. See, this is what happens when you don't use your own Revit file. Let's put some dimensions in it here real quickly. Oops, Home tab. No. See? Now I'm lost. There we go. It takes a while sometimes. Oh, and it's in metric too. So any one of these things that we click on it, I can simply type equals on a dimension line, put in some dimension, 6,000 minus some other. I'm not going to do it right now because I'll probably blow up this building. But any one of those things, those little dialog boxes, can be a calculated value for you. Okay? Why do we still use Imperial, by the way? Right? When I go do stuff, I was at the Revit Technologies Conference I did in Australia last year. All my data sets are Imperial. And I was down there, they're going, 256 of an inch? What?
Silly Americans.
These silly Americans, pretty much, yeah, exactly. All right, so all of those lines can be a calculator for you. So you can do that, and we'll show you some of the more complex formulas you can use later. Those can be things like the cosine of an angle, this, that, minus, square root, logarithmic functions. Really anything you want can be typed in those as well. And the example, again, in the PowerPoint was actually inside of a dialog box for a dimension. 2D versus 3D. This is huge. And actually, see, this is another example I had on my machine, but I'll tell you about it. People in Revit tend to get enamored by the modeling side of it, right? Oh, that's so cool. I'm going to model every single little crevice of the door jamb, right? And manufacturers are actually really guilty of this, and this is the example I was going to use. So if you go out to Seek, which is our website for gathering content together, a lot of the content there is getting a lot better, but a lot of it still needs a lot of improvement. In fact, we just launched some new things on Seek. Let me see if I can pull that up here real quick. Seek.autodesk.com. Oops. Typing is also not one of my strong points. Should have paid more attention in high school. I think we're connected. Anyway, while that pulls up, there's actually a rating system now on the Seek objects. So if the manufacturer has complied with about 9 or 10 different techniques in Revit, you'll see a little icon. Like, are they including a shared parameter file? That will be there that'll be as an icon. Do they have the materials included with the file? So on and so forth. So when you start seeing that rating system, those are generally better families than some of the ones in the past. So what ends up happening is people start modeling all of this little intricate detail, and the reason why I use door frames or window frames is generally we can't see that stuff. And let's take a door frame, for example. If you're going to look at that at an 8-scale elevation or interior elevation, just the outside lines is fine. I don't need to see all of the aluminum extrusion or the steel extrusion inside of the door frame. This elevator is a good example. So this can be actually drawn as a 2D piece of geometry embedded inside of the family. And when we cut through the elevator, we actually see all of this stuff. But in the Revit model, we might only just see the door as a 3D piece of geometry. So minimize that. Another one is, and I was guilty of this too, is toilets, right? We go, oh, that's a really cool 3D toilet in the library. Actually, it's not. I hate the 3D toilet in the library inside of Revit. I think almost everybody makes their own. But don't put 3D toilets in all of your rooms, right? If you need to do a rendering of the bathroom, how many people have done renderings of bathrooms? Couple. All right. So then use the 3D toilet in one room. Otherwise, just use a 2D representation of it. You can make a family that's a plan view, a front view, and side views as one thing, as 2D geometry. So when you place it in your project, you can actually see all of those views. When I look at an interior elevation, there's the front of the toilet. When I look at it in plan, I can dimension to it. If I use 3D geometry, especially because toilets are so curved and they've got the trap below them and all of that good stuff, right? There's a lot of geometry going on there. So use 2D where appropriate. Use 3D where you where you need to see it. Okay, does that make sense? All right. How are we doing on time? I got about half an hour. Graphic overrides. So this particular tip is talking about using graphic overrides to quickly indicate poche during design. So one thing we like to do as architects, actually, I think poche as a term actually isn't even a real word, right? It kind of got invented by architects. Poche in that wall. It used to come from our drafting days, our hand drafting days. So we still like to use poche to show walls and other objects as kind of the solid look. But if we set that in object styles, it applies to every single view throughout the entire project, right? So just use view-specific graphic overrides. You know, you can actually right-click and you can say override element in view. Pick something like walls. Set the cut pattern to maybe a diagonal hatch pattern or a solid hatch pattern. And now only that one view is the poche. Maybe that's the one that goes in the schematic design set. And then later on, you can have another view that shows the more detail of the wall. It's a much faster way to work. Don't be afraid of creating views in Revit, right? Used to be in CAD days, we cut one section this way through the building and one section that way through the building because it took a lot of time to draft sections by hand. X-roughing in all of that geometry and, you know, drawing up construction lines and things. So now, don't be worried about that. Cut a bunch of sections, use what you need to in your construction documentation set, make a view that's for schematic design, make another view that's more of your construction documentation view, make another view for design development. You can always just delete those views later if you don't need them. They don't really add that much weight to the project. It's just redisplaying geometry that's already there. All right, this was in our list. This part is I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because this is one of those ones I said I could probably take all day on and just do 33 reasons why I can't see it. Did you guys realize there was 33 reasons why? At least 33. That's all I've come up with so far. 33 reasons why you can't see something in a Revit view. All right, so there's a whole bunch. So I'll start listing these things out. And I may skip, or I will probably skip a lot. So, normal. The object or category is temporarily hidden, right? So you can actually temporarily hide something in a view. You can permanently hide something in a view. Object is being obscured by another element. That actually happens a lot. Somebody will go to the first floor plan and grab something that needs to be copied up to the second floor, right? Grab them all, copy, paste by level, paste it up to level 2. Somebody else will come along and go, oh, let's do that. And they do the same thing. So if they grab the first 2 floors and they copied it, and they think they're going to the fourth floor, and they're copying over the toilets that are already on the 3rd floor. So now you've got a toilet directly on top of another toilet, right? Happens a lot. So objects being obscured by other elements. Oops, I skipped 2. Object subcategory, a category is hidden in a view. The object is outside the view range, right? So view range is one of those things that is really, really tough to grasp in Revit, right? We've all struggled with it. What's the cut plane? What does view below, unlimited mean, and above? And so just be aware that sometimes things fall outside of the view range and you cannot see them any longer. Views far clip depth is not sufficient to show the object. So this is clip depth for, let's say, a section, right? And I showed you earlier that we could actually pull that section in and show a small sliver of a building section. Well, you could say, well, there used to be a table there. It doesn't show in that view anymore. Well, it's because the clip depth might not be deep enough to show that particular view. Told you there's a lot. This is 7 out of 33. Work sets. So there's a bunch on work sets. The object resides in a work set that's not loaded. Work set that's not visible in the view. Object resides in a work set that is not loaded in a linked file, or a work set that is not visible in a linked file. All right. All kinds of things here. And again, this is one of those things that we'll just run through quickly, but I'm going to send over the entire PowerPoint. I've actually seen people, BIM managers, CAD managers, whatever our title is now. My title at WLC was Technology Coordinator. I didn't even have BIM in my title. Print this one out and paste it up next to the monitor like you used to do for your keyboard shortcuts in AutoCAD just so you can see why can't I see something in a view. Object resides within a group and it's been excluded from the group, right? So we have the ability when we make groups to click on something and say, don't show it in that particular instance of the group. So you're looking at a unit plan and you're like, well, the table is in that group and it's not in this one. If you move your mouse over, it'll actually highlight. You'll be able to see it temporarily. And that means it's been excluded from that group. The object is part of a design option is not visible in the view. Anybody use design options? Yeah? Very, very powerful stuff. I love design options. The object is part of a linked file that is not visible in the view. Right? So you can go into the visibility graphics and actually turn off an entire linked file or portions of linked files. Somebody might have turned it off. Let's go a little quicker. Somebody's overridden the line style with the invisible line type. That's actually a fun trick to play on somebody. In a work set file, just take the line work tool, set it to invisible, and start clicking. How come half of my table doesn't show up? Do you guys ever do that in AutoCAD too? Play tricks on people? Right? We used to do a thing where we'd zoom in like as far as possible and draw a figure or type something, and then see if anybody would ever discover it. You zoom in like really far into the corner of a wall. All right. There's all kinds of tricks you can do in AutoCAD. Lisp makes that very fun. All right. Object in the family and numbers geometry is set to be visible in the view type. A lot of these come up with the view's detail level. So all objects in Revit have coarse, medium, and fine level of detail. If somebody has set a particular object not to show in coarse, again, I'll use, let's say a table for some reason, and you have the table there in one view and it's not there in another, check the display of the view. Maybe it's set to coarse and for some reason that table is set not to display in coarse. Okay? 17, we're a little over halfway there. Object is set not to be visible at the category's detail level. That's the same thing again. We'll fly through these. Let me see if we can get to a couple others that are important. Discipline. Hey, there's one. So we're talking MEP structure and architecture. We get that a lot in the forums. How come I can't see something? I'm in Revit structure. How come I can't see the walls? Well, because the discipline isn't set to coordination, right? In the coordination view, a structural engineer can see the architectural walls and the structural walls. So that's a question we get quite often. View filters applied to a view is something else that can affect its visibility. Element overrides set to the background color. There's another good one, right? So you go and you set an object override to white. How many people use a black screen in Revit in here? Oh, I see one hand. Good. Get them. No. Again, that comes from old AutoCAD days. Literally, I have users that go through when they first start Revit, set the background color to black, and adjust their object style to try to mimic AutoCAD layers. So like their walls are red and their dimensions are yellow, right? They're trying to mimic the colors from AutoCAD. Don't do that. That's a good tip. Category override set to the background color. Object style is set to the background color. So realize object styles are global. They affect the entire project. You've got view-specific overrides that affect the object of that particular type in the view, and then you've got element-level overrides of every view, right? These are all things users ask for that, Autodesk, the Revit development team gave you, but they're all things that make things more complicated. User said, we want more control of how everything looks in a view. Okay, we'll do that, but just realize that it came with a lot of, just being careful with how you use these things. We're almost done with this part. Object is constrained to a scope box that is not visible in the views. Everybody who's not familiar with scope boxes? Anybody? Okay, a couple. So a scope box is something you can actually tie things like levels and grids to, even 3D section boxes. So you can define a scope box and give it a name. They can say like building portion A, building portion B, and then you can tie the levels and grids to that particular scope box, and you can toggle that on and off. I don't want to see the grids from building section A and my building section B, so we can actually turn those things off. That's what scope boxes are for. The extent of the object itself don't permit it to be seen. It's like a big, gigantic object, and you're in a floor plan, and the extent of it is out here, and you can't see it. Object is a mass, and show mass is turned off. That actually gets me from time to time. Like, I just built it. Where did it go? The object host view has been deleted. View scale is prohibiting the object's visibility, right? So that's actually a good tip. Inside of sections, there's this little parameter called show at scales coarser than, right? That's a good way that you can say, don't show sections in my overall site plan. So I'm chopping sections to the building, and maybe your site plan's at 1 to 40, 1 to 50. You can actually set sections not to show when they get beyond a certain scale. 31, object is linked to an instance with coordinates too great for Revit to handle. This actually changed a little bit last year. We went from a kind of 2-mile radius for the way Revit handles geometry to a 20-mile radius. So that grew a little bit. And 32 and 33, user has incorrectly identified the linked instance to which the element belongs, so we just blame that one on the user. and the object in a link that is not in its correct position. All right? So that's kind of 33 reasons. Again, this will be something that you guys can have as a document to print out. So next time one of your users come to you and says, I can't see whatever, you can hand them the list. Go down, check these off. All right, any questions on that so far? None? All right. I'm either doing really well or you guys are thoroughly bored. No? Hopefully the first. You're doing really okay. Easy section boxes. Has anybody made a section box view in Revit, right? A few? They can be a little bit difficult sometimes, so I have a quick little set of instructions here to do it, and actually I will just go out and show you how to do it and show you what the difficulty is in doing one of these particular section boxes. So kind of normal workflow here, even though this isn't my model, we'll try it. Create a camera view. I'm just going to stand outside the building and we're going to look this way, and it's going to create this overall view. I'm going to grab the steering wheel. How many people like the steering wheel? Like 4. No. It's actually really useful. I actually, when I was in practice, used this a lot in presentations because you can start to do things like moving around. A lot of people don't know that when you're doing the look tool like this, you can actually use the arrow keys at the same time, so you can walk around like a video game. So it's kind of combining those things into one, right? You have your speed on your walk turned way down though, huh? Probably. Because mine is like, whoo, zoom all the way through the building. We should add that to 34. You've zoomed past your building in a perspective view. All right, so get your view set up. I happen to like using the steering wheel to do that. So set your view up. You can also use a bunch of keyboard shortcuts, you know, like Shift, and the middle mouse button allows you to orbit and spin around. So there are shortcuts without using the wheel. Well, then you go over here to Properties, and you turn on your 3D section box because maybe you want to do some kind of cool cut section of this thing. And there it is, and you go, oh, that's cool. Well, there it is. Well, I want to pull this thing in front back and cut off the front of the building, but I can't get to the section box because, as you can see, it's actually kind of way out here in space. You can zoom way back, and eventually you might get to it and see how kind of crazy distorted it's getting. It's just way out there. So much easier way to do this. Let's throw a little color in here too, just so we can see it. So keyboard shortcut for color, SD by default. If I use keyboard shortcuts, I try to announce what they are. Now we're going to use the view cube. How many people like the view cube? All right, a lot more. Whew. Go ahead and toggle that to a view that looks like this. Oh wait, you just screwed up your perspective view. Well, yeah, kind of. But now at least you can get to the section box. Oops. That's the other tricky thing. You have to kind of click right in between the arrows, right, to do section boxes. We'll zoom in a little bit more. Maybe I shouldn't have put color on. It makes the arrows hard to see. So then maybe we want to do our section like that. Maybe we want to pull this one into the side. You know, use the view cube and go top down, right? And now you can kind of see more or less where you're at. You notice that we're still in a perspective view even though it really doesn't look like it, right? Okay. So now, once you get the section box cut the way you want it to, go back to your steering wheel. Yes, you'll enjoy using it at some point. Go to this little guy called the rewind tool. Click rewind and rewind back through the film strip until you get to your original camera view that you wanted. So see how I did all the zooming around. Keep going, and we're almost there and stop. All right, so there's the same exact camera I used in the first place with a section box cut the way I wanted it to, looking at what I wanted to look at. So the rewind tool doesn't rewind, it's not an undo, it just takes the view and sets it back to what it was. And as you saw, by using that, I can actually go back to kind of any of the positions all along that as I was zooming off into space there. Now, do not, big tip, go over here and go, okay, I'm done with my section box. Let's just go ahead and uncheck it. Right? What happens if I do? Section box disappears. All my edits are gone. Let's go ahead and do it. Told you not to. Apply that, gone, everything's back. Oh, no, that's not what I want to do. Let's turn it back on. Crap. Reset it, go back here, pull everything back in again. I'll try to do it quickly. Something like that, and rewind. You'll notice now my rewind has been reset, right? It's only a couple things, it's not the whole big thing. So it's not infinitely going to keep a film strip for, because can you imagine you did all of the stuff in a view and you had to rewind back for, 8 hours worth of work? So what you do, highlight it, right click, hide in view, element, and now you don't see it anymore. Or keyboard shortcut, see if yours is set up, VH is typically view, hide, element, basically hide an element in the view, and it does the same thing. So now you've got a 3D section box. Then a lot of people with section boxes ask about the poche that ends up showing up. And notice that I don't have that poche on right now. It's because the poche only shows up in a coarse level of detail. So when I turn it on, you start getting everything that's cut is actually blue, and who knows how to change that? Anybody? How do you change it? You raise your hand. I got to put you on the spot. You could do it in view overrides. It's also a material, right? So if you go to your materials dialog box, go over to manage, materials, and go down this list, there's actually a material called poche. Right there. Notice that it's blue. We can actually set it to a real material if you want something real, or you can just change the color here. Maybe we want our poche to be red, and apply that, and now the poche is red instead. And again, it's part of the 33 steps. What is shown in medium and what is shown in coarse are two different things. So if visibility isn't happening the way you want it to, play around with the coarse, medium, and fine level of detail settings. Yes?
Can you do that, the coarse poche in a hidden line view?
Yes. So I'm in. Oh, yeah.
So you want to talk to your guys?
Yes. Talk about being put on the spot. Yeah, it used to show up right here, didn't it? Huh. Yeah. Every once in a while, developers do something really cool and they don't, we have all of this regression testing. Have you guys heard of, we have a regression farm. You know what a regression farm is? I had no idea either when I joined Autodesk until one of the guys when I went to Waltham, Massachusetts, took me into this room that was loaded with like server after server after server. And he goes, this is the regression farm. I went, okay, what is that? It's actually Revit's code. Do you guys know that a new version of Revit is created every hour of every day? Right? That's where your build numbers come from, and your builds have the date in them, and then the actual hour and 24-hour time format. Every single hour of every day is a new build of Revit. When we choose to ship you all a version, that's the one that's been tested the most thoroughly. When we put it in the box and call it, release 2000 R1 if there's no R2 or R3 yet in that particular case. And that regression farm basically takes the latest set of code every single hour and runs a set of scripts that looks for every single error that's ever occurred in Revit and tests it against itself. Right? So that's why Revit is, I should say, fairly stable. I mean, I know we still have a few things here and there, some crashing going on. A lot of that has to do with video. Right? So that's a tip. If you're getting a lot of crashing and a lot of artifacts in your view, it's probably your video card, your video drivers. I would say make sure those are most up to date, but in some cases, the most up-to-date driver isn't the perfect one. Sometimes you have to roll it back. What's the combination? It's hit and miss sometimes. All right, so let's move on. Any other questions? All right, let's see here. 15 more minutes. I think we're doing all right. Uh-oh. Let's see. Where was I? About right there. I don't know how that, I must have hit escape or something, huh? All right, so there's a set of instructions on how to do that. All right, normalized curve parameter. Have you guys, who's heard of this? A couple? No? Anybody done any of the conceptual modeling, any of the massing stuff yet, right? This is actually a term that comes out of that. So for those that are used to actually building families now, what are called loadable families, a door, a window, a light, a piece of furniture, you're used to a certain technique, right, which is really to build a skeleton, a framework of reference planes and reference lines, tie your parameters to those reference lines, flex everything, right? That's one of our big things is always flex your geometry in the family editor and then hang your geometry on it. And inside of that, we've got these cool things for doing equality constraints. We've all used an equality constraint, I'm sure, inside of a family. It says we always want this door to be centered around this origin point or something to that effect. So there's certain techniques we use in families, loadable families, that start to change a little bit when we get into the conceptual modeling environment. So what I end up finding is a lot of people take that same technique when they start getting into conceptual modeling and applying those same techniques, and things start falling apart and they don't know why. So I was hoping to explain that a little bit and start inspiring you to try some of these new things. So this normalized curve parameter is actually one of the values that's available under measurement type, and I'm going to go into Revit and show you guys this here in just a moment, which also can be set to these any number of different, not any number, but several different types. One is a non-normalized curve parameter, segment length, normalized segment length, chord length, and angle. So these are all different values we can set to this. So let me show you a little bit about what those are. Let's go back to Revit. We'll close out of the modern house. It's funny, one of the internal guys, a guy named Greg Dimchak, who goes by the name Frame. So when you walk into Waltham, you say, "Is Frame here?" And then Greg comes out. If you call for Greg, he has no idea what you're talking about. He actually did that little modern house file some time ago, and it's still around. It's still something we use. There's actually a design for a real project, a real house that he wanted to do it at some particular time. So a little history on that guy. So we're going to do a new conceptual mask, pick the mask template. And for those that haven't got into this environment, the very first thing you notice is that it looks a little bit different right away. You're in a 3D environment. You have this cool 3D level line. Wish we had those on a project, don't you? Right? In a normal project environment. Maybe someday we'll get those. You get a couple of reference planes going in here. I'm just going to draw a real simple piece of geometry. We're just going to draw a line. And it doesn't even matter where it goes. So the idea with conceptual modeling is that you can host geometry on other parts of geometry. So what we're going to do here is use this line to actually set a constraint that could be an equality constraint using a point. So it's a new tool, a relatively new tool. It's available in the conceptual modeling environment. So you've got lines and boxes and circles and splines and things, but you have this other tool called a point. When you come down over your drawing surface, if you actually place this point on another piece of geometry, you'll notice that it goes kind of from a large dot, and as soon as you hit the geometry, it highlights and becomes a small dot. So we'll go ahead and place that right on there. That dot is actually now hosted on that line automatically. And you can see that by if you pick the dot and you grab it with your mouse and move it along, it slides along that rail. So this is about using a different kind of technique inside of the masking editor to create geometry that functions as a rail or a set of controlling geometry that we can do other things. So now this parameter called measurement type comes from this point. So when I select that one point, let's make the dialog box here for properties just a little bigger so we can see this. And you'll notice by default it's called the normalized curve parameter. Now you also have segment length and normalized segment length. So what's the difference between a curve parameter and a segment length parameter? Anybody know? They really do the same thing, except a straight line in geometric terms, as far as computer language goes, is actually a curve. It just happens to be straight. A segment is a segment. It has to be straight. It can't be a curve, right? So that's kind of the difference there between these two. So in some cases, these can be used interchangeably between normalized curve parameter and normalized segment length. They really do the same thing until you start getting into geometry. It actually is a true curve or something that might need to become curved later on. Because when you're doing this stuff, you can actually make a line that appears to be straight at some times and then actually morphs into a curve using the conceptual modeling tools. So we're going to use normalized segment length. Right below that is the normalized segment length value, and right now it's some crazy decimal, 0.365854. In the normal family editor environment, if you wanted this dot to be right in the middle of that line always, most people would go up to the dimension tool, set a work plane, tab into this point, maybe to this point. Oops, see, I'm off my work plane. You have to set it over here, or set it to this particular line. Oh, I got to turn that into a reference line. Okay, and we'll set our work plane to one of these, and we'll dimension along that now. To endpoint into that dot, and then I might go toggle equality, right? So now that dot is at the middle of the line, and depending on what I do to this, it will always stay at the middle of that line. This will start to fall apart. And this is kind of a normal technique that if you're used to building normal families, that you'll try. So you try it in the conceptual masking environment. What happens though is if you come in here and tab into this endpoint, if I can get to it again, if I start changing this thing in a Z direction, which I'm not able to do right now, but sometimes when you create conceptual massing, things start getting out of plane. Dimensions like to be planar, right? They always like to reside on a work plane. What will end up happening is if this thing starts to tweak and get out of plane, especially if you're dealing with curtain wall systems, this equality constraint will fall apart because it won't be able to stay snapped to the endpoints of the lines any longer. So I'm going to undo a couple times. So what we do instead in this kind of family, undo a lot, is grab that point, go to the normalized segment length, and set this to a value called 0.5. Right? So now it puts that dot directly in the middle of the line, and just like using a dimension, no matter what happens to it, it always stays in the middle of the line. The advantage of using this parameter is it doesn't have to be the midpoint. What if you want that point to always be a third of the way across the line? Come in here and go 0.33333, apply that, and now that point stays a third of the way across the line at all times. If I wanted another point, we could do another one. And this one could be 0.66667 repeating. So now it's 2/3 of the way across the line. Right? So now those will always stay. Now I can take those points and I can host other geometry on top of those things. So you can actually build families inside of this conceptual modeling environment and use no dimensional parameters. They're all done by this curve-based parameter instead. Now there's a couple different ones that we can use as well. What if you want it to always be based upon a very certain length? So we could set that as well. So now that when I set it by length, this parameter value changes the segment length at 72 feet. What if I want it to always be 100 feet? Oops, did I actually type in here? 100 feet from the beginning of the line and apply that, and now it is. Or if I want it from the other direction, depends on what point you picked first and last to draw the line. And you can actually move these things around. It's almost in the middle. All right. So now that point will stay 100 feet from the beginning of the line at all times, no matter how this geometry flexes, moves inside of the project. There's a couple others that we can use. We start getting into building some more complex geometry, maybe that's based on circles. We can host a point on a circle. Go into the point properties, set that by angle, and we can say that that point always needs to be at the 90-degree portion of the circle. I could place several more on here. And if I wanted to take the time to go and fix all of them, if I wanted these to be every 60 degrees, then I could draw lines in between them and make a hexagon. And it would always remain a hexagon no matter what happened to the geometry, even if the circle started to tip out of plane. Okay? So just a different technique when you start getting into conceptual modeling. And the reason why I thought this was important is because a lot of people are just getting into doing some of this stuff. And if you use the techniques that you're used to now in the family editor for drawing a door or window, they're going to start falling apart in here. Now there's some more information for this also available online, and I can give you guys some links through the website as well to investigate some more. Yes, ma'am?
So when you said 90 degrees, it didn't move below 90 degrees or diameter with your point?
Yeah, it all depends on the start and stop point of the where I clicked, right? So I started the point there, and I went and drug this way, and there was where I did the next one, so it's 90 degrees from that point, right? So you got to be very careful with that as well. Now, another little tip when you get into this environment, most people want to go, if you wanted to connect these 2 points with a piece of geometry, would pick the line tool and snap to this point and snap to this point, if I can get it. Oops. See, it's not even letting me. I won't try to go snap node. So the better technique is actually just to highlight the two points, and then use this tool, which is called spline through points. So if I pick just 2, you might think, well, a spline is a curve. Remember what I said a few minutes ago? The curve and a line are really the same kind of thing. If I pick that, it actually, between 2 points, draws a straight line for me. So if I continue to go all the way around this object, spline through points 2 at a time, and let me show you the difference. If I go 3 at a time, now it draws a real spline curve through those points. It wants to actually bend it. If you do 2 at a time, it makes a straight line segment. So if you want to draw a hex, of course mine's not a perfect hex because I didn't take the time to set all of these, but I could. And then the coolest thing about these particular objects is that they are parameterizable. Is that a word? You can parameterize them. So the little equal symbol is here, and I can actually tie that into a value, so I could adjust where that point falls along the circle from within a project. So if I was doing some circular curtain wall or hexagonal curtain wall system, I could actually use that and change the overall geometry by a parameter by changing that value. And a couple others that you have in here, you saw we have chord length as well, so that sets the chord length of the between the points, and non-normalized is an overall value. And in fact, in my slide deck that I'll give you, and I didn't, I don't think we should take the time probably to go over all of these things. And in fact, I'm pretty much running out of time. But I explain what each one of these is, and there's actually in the help documentation the same language. I copied this right out of the help documentation. So if you don't know what a non-normalized curve parameter is, identifies the location of the reference point along a circle or ellipse, is also known as a raw, natural, internal, or T parameter for those that want to get into geometry stuff. All right, a couple more things before we wrap up here. Next. Formulas and families. I was hoping to get to this more. As we said earlier, when we type something in at an equal sign at a dimension or in a dialog box, there's a whole host of things you can do. All simple arithmetic, addition, subtraction, multiplication, but what you may not have known is you can raise something to a power, you can do an arc tangent, an arc cosine of an angle. We introduced this year round functioning, so if you're looking to do like area occupancy, and you want Revit to calculate that for you, and it always needs to round up to the next biggest number for occupancy, you can use a round up function now to actually round that up for you automatically. We used to have to do some tricks to that before in the past, which was like a +1, right, on our own. Some formulas for everyday uses. Actually, this is a really great website. So this is actually, I did a screen capture off the web, off the Revit forums, and let's control-click this guy real quick and go out and check this website out. How many people are members of the Revit forums? A few? If you're not, go sign up for this one, as well as Augie, as well as the Autodesk news groups. Uh-oh, maybe I'm not on the net. It wouldn't connect? All right, well, when you get the PowerPoint, go click on this link and go check this out, or go search for it on your own. It's under the tips and tricks section. And this user, Monkom, I'm not sure how you say his name. He's actually from the Netherlands, and he posted, this is about a third of the length of text that he wrote, all about how you could use these different various formulas inside of Revit. Now, let's see here. That's a cool one. This is, I know we're almost out of time. There's a whole list of things here, and let me just quickly go through these. Who's not on a 64-bit computer? Who's on a 32-bit machine still? Couple? Get those upgraded right away. Manager views. We laugh. 64-bit, I was in Costco the other day, and they had a HP desktop machine with dual monitors, 64-bit with 8 gigs of RAM. It was $1,000. I mean, so computing power is getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. You can't buy a 32-bit machine anymore. Revit loves the horsepower, as you know. Some of these we already saw. Delete or unload your unused CAD files. Don't explode CAD. Turn off the volume computation. Minimize level of detail. Some of these are tips, like I said, that we just saw, but these will all be in the PowerPoint, so you can kind of get this rapid-fire list of things that you should be aware of as overall tips and tricks as you're in your Revit projects. And there's, I think, 3 pages of these. So let me just, back up one. Don't over-parameterize. That's one that gets people a lot. You start adding parameters to everything and locking this value and then locking this value, and then you get that, oh, darn it, circular chain of constraints errors pops up on you as well. And then this one actually comes from Phil Reed himself. For very sculptural and organic stairs, there's always a family editor. So he teaches a class every year that's at AU, or he has in the past, and you can go see that on the AU website and look at his stairs class, and he actually just goes to the family editor and builds some things on his own for doing some really complex stairs. And to wrap up, 2013 Revit. You guys excited? Getting ready? Prepare to upgrade. Right? Anybody on 2011 still? Couple? How come you haven't upgraded yet? Who's on 2010 still? Where's the project? Yeah. How about AutoCAD R14? All right. So, launch of 2013 for Revit is, drum roll, soon. Sorry. Got you on that one. Coming soon, right? We're all historians. Everybody can go do a little research on their own, right? When was Revit released last year? When was it released the year before that? And the year before that? You get a pretty good idea. It's coming just around the corner. And some of the new features that we've been testing in beta, and I recognize some of the faces in the room. I know some of you are on the beta forums already. So some of those come from the wish list. Could we cover everything? No, not in this release. Again, some things that are highly requested features haven't quite made it, but keep watching out for those. And then help us help you. Join the beta team. So if you're not on the beta team, just go to beta.autodesk.com and you can sign up. It's free. You make a username and login. Then you get invited to the beta. So you will get an email, or you may not. We have a lot of people, so we have to be somewhat selective. You may get an email from one of the project managers, and they will invite you to the beta and give you the rest of the instructions on how to sign up. And that takes me to 3 minutes over 1 o'clock. So thank you guys very much. I will be around for questions. Sure.
Okay, well, a couple of last things and we'll let everybody go. We'll have to put that, maybe I'll just cut those onto a little page for those 33 tips so you can glue it to your screen.
Yeah, exactly.
Just print and glue, then you'll be ready to go. So yes, thank you, Scott, for that was a great presentation. He'll be here hanging out for questions if you want. We'll be here for about a half hour. If you have any questions about sponsorship as well, you can catch me. I'll be around. 2012 is going to be a good year. Next meeting, March 21st. Might as well put it in your calendar now. And
you might start hearing some hints about 2013 around that time. Hint, possibly.
Yeah, there's a nice little plug for next month's meeting. So that's it. If there's some leftover sandwiches, I think, some cookies, so feel free to grab. And thanks, everybody. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, you guys, very much.